quick. Okay. Hi, everybody. We are going to figure out how to get you guys invoicing us for $10,000 of SBA planning money. Get them to your local entrepreneur ecosystem programs. There seems to be, I don't know, some confusion. And so we thought internally it would be really important to give you the basics. So let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Perry's put in a sample invoice, which I'll go over in a minute. So first of all, I want to remind you of what you can spend the money on. So let's do a little screen share. Hold on. All right, you see that screen? Okay. Planning consists of, maybe it's gathering data, recruiting ecosystem partners. So Dave, all the many conversations you're having in the community, it could be 40 hours of work having those conversations or more.
And do you mind increasing the view a little?
Yes.
That's great.
How's that?
That's even better. Thanks.
Sorry. So all those meetings that you guys have just out in the field, getting people to come. Oops, Angie's coming in. Come to the ecosystem meetings. The people you're meeting with and having conversations with, those all count as time. And, you know, although it's not attending a meeting, you are working with people and, you know, trying to get them to come, telling them about the program. Any meeting logistics, forwarding Zoom invites, you know, so this may be one day you spend 5 minutes and another day you spend an hour. And, you know, I would say be generous with your time as far as tracking it. And then all the time that you spend attending this meeting or any others, those all count towards planning money. This is the budget that we created as a guesstimate for the SBA. They did not understand that this work was going to look different in every community. So this is what we guessed. You could also say that the space where you're holding your meeting, if you are gathering a group, it might be, I feel like one of our communities meets together for their ecosystem meetings, so they could actually say, this, we could pay rent to this site. You know, it's costing us this much per hour. Maybe it's Holton that's doing that.
Yeah, Holton is paying the college for their room rental.
Thank you. And even if it's, you know, Heart of Biddeford's office, that space has a value for that number of hours that you're using it for that purpose. And that's okay. Even though there's not actually rent changing hands, I think you could include that in your invoice. So those are the allowable expenses, but then we have other things like Cara asked us early on, could she buy an owl, which is one of the kind of 360-degree cameras to use during remote meetings? And we said, sure. So that's a direct expense. There's a, you know, receipt for it. So that is something else that you could apply for. If you attend some training meeting related to ecosystem work that's outside of what we're doing, that's building your knowledge at the local level, the time and the expenses to attend that meeting could count towards planning. So anything that's building your knowledge. And everything has to be documented. We did have someone ask about traveling to the Main Street America cohort and, Main Street America conference. And I think you could use some of your travel money to cover going to Boston, if that helps you out or other members of your board. This is kind of a recent decision on our part. So it's not something we've put out there before today. So you could use some of your travel money to cover that, assuming, again, you're building your broad knowledge of entrepreneur ecosystem building and you're attending those sessions. I think we can justify that. Okay, so those are the allowable expenses. Any questions on allowable expenses?
When does it have to be spent by?
It's actually not till January 31st, 2024.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be when this first session of meetings ends.
No, I mean, I think obviously we'd like to give you the money. We are sitting on the money. This is not, it's reimbursable to you, but the SBA has already given us the money. So as soon as you get us an invoice in 2 weeks, you will have the money, depending upon the timing of the Wednesday of writing checks. So anyway, I'd love to turn it around and give you all the $10,000 or do it in 2 lumps, like maybe you bill 5 now and 5 later. It doesn't matter to us. But the big thing is those are the allowable expenses. And if you have another idea, just come to us and ask, and then we will kind of go to what our letter of agreement and what SBA says and make a decision. It doesn't mean we're totally restricted to those ideas. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the format of the invoicing, but Perry put a comment in the chat for me. When talking about the donated labor form, who does that apply to? Only the directors? No, the donated labor form could be all sorts of people. It could be your stakeholders. I mean, all of those people are donating their time. It could be your board members. I think Westbrook has their Economic Vitality Committee largely participating. All of their time counts as donated labor. And in one case, like Lori Johnson works for Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. So she has like, I don't know, professional expertise. So she's not going to get like the minimum wage of whatever it is at the moment. In her donated labor, she might have a much higher rate, but that's the donated labor goes towards your match. You know, you're not going to be reimbursed for your donated labor unless you say, I have a professional ecosystem builder or some other professional expertise that you want to pay. In the case of Heart of Biddeford and Saco, they are contracting with Megan to do the work. So that's not donated labor. Yeah, that's actual human professional labor that they are using their planning money to support. So other questions on what is reimbursable?
I just want to make the reminder for the travel expenses pot that while some of that can go to the Main Street America conference, just keep in mind as part of the agreement that you'll also be going to Rural Rise. And so make sure you have, funds earmarked for that, as well as our final kind of cohort meeting, which is a little, it's not set in terms of location and date yet, but
Matt will be coming back to Maine and you guys will all be getting together. Good question, Holly or Angie, whoever asked that. Recommended increments of time. I mean, I said in the beginning, be generous with your time. If it's like 1.5 hours, I think you could say 2 hours. I mean, we just want to get you the money. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that being recorded, but we want to just get the money over to you. Dave.
So how are you looking for documentation on the staff time? Like, so candidly, we weren't tracking it in like our time tracker. So I'm like literally just went with my bookkeeper and we're just like looking back at, we look back at calendar from November and then just like counted up hours.
Yep. So I'm going to show you the documentation next.
Okay, cool.
and give you exactly what we need. I just want to make sure that we're good on what you can get reimbursed for.
And
Yeah, Melissa.
so I'm not the director anymore. If
I know, but we're so glad you're here with us.
if I were to do trainings or whatever, is that exclusive to the Main Street positions, or is it?
No.
In team?
So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure which way you're asking it. If you in your new position were doing a community training on entrepreneurial ecosystem, like attending one or hosting one, or either.
If I were to participate maybe with Tamara in some type of like webinar or
Sure.
ecosystem training or whatever.
Yes, yes. Both time. I don't know. Well, here's a little bit of a distinction. I think the planning money could pay for your registration.
Yeah.
I don't know if the planning money would pay the city of Gardner for your time, but your time could go towards match at. Does that make sense?
Right. And then I don't even know if this is something we're going to do, but like say it's a registration, and then so Tamara should pay for my registration, or should it be?
Yeah.
Or
I
whatever.
mean, that's the cleanest would be that Gardner Main Street, who the letter of agreement is with, would pay for the training for 3 people to attend some entrepreneur ecosystem training, and that would be one of her allowable expenses.
Okay.
And then the time of everybody could go towards match at various hourly rates. Okay. I see your question there, Michael. We did go over that. That was the first thing we went over, and I'll cut and paste the allowable expenses into the chat after we go over the documentation piece, if that's okay. 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 Ready to move to documentation? All right. Sample invoice. Let me share the screen again, and I'll make it big, Sylvie. Give me a moment. Okay, here's your pretend sample invoice. Reimbursable expenses. This is a suggestion. You will have this in a Word document, roughly the dates, what the item is and the activity, and then the cost. It was 50 hours at $10 an hour, $500. The documentation is a pay stub. It doesn't have to be a pay stub for that period. It just has to be a pay stub showing that this is, you know, what your hourly rate is. So Dave, you can absolutely reconstruct your time from November, December, and January. And I'm telling you, all of you are spending time doing this work. You're always talking to the businesses, the entrepreneurs, and I feel like this is a very flexible area to capture a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So look at it as, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just gonna say for clarification, and if it's helpful, what we were tracking is not only the meetings that we're having with stakeholders, but also the like researching kind of leading up to those meetings with Matt, like also
yes, all of it.
I'm creating the comms on, yeah. So we have a lot of time tracked there. And so what you're saying is I don't need to show essentially calendar printouts or time logs. I can show you the hours. I can show the hours, the hourly rate, and then documentation could just be a pay stub, and that can suffice for the documentation.
I think so, yes. And I mean, the only thing I'd ask is, you know, this program started in November, so maybe we don't just say November through, you know, March, but maybe you say November it was this many hours, December it was this many hours. I think that would make it a little more granular.
So yeah, so yeah, and again, how we breaking it down, and hopefully this is helpful for the whole group, was by month, by like line of activity. So it's like research, communications, meetings, and then it. But I just was like, I don't have a time log. It's off Google Calendar. So I just wanted to make sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if for some reason they aren't happy with that, I'm going to come back, but that seems okay to me. You're saying what you did and what month you did it. You didn't say that on week 4, we did 4.5 hours. I get that, but I think that's fine.
Okay.
And again, like, there's so much work that you guys have been doing in this space that you might not even recognize that you're doing. So, yes.
So do we need pay stubs for each month?
As long as the rate is the same, I think you don't need different pay stubs.
Okay.
Melissa had a
Um,
question about
But
volunteer rate.
volunteer rates.
Mhm.
So volunteer rates are dependent on, and I'll get you the link at the federal government on what the person is doing. Like, if the person is doing some kind of data analysis, it's going to be different than if someone is just attending a meeting. I mean, I hate to belittle it, but because they are on the committee, so I feel like there's different rates, and we can get the link. The federal government volunteer rate is depending upon what they're doing. So I put the OWL in here. You just need a copy of a receipt for a direct expense. Michael, I saw that you asked about like gas and mileage. You should have all been reimbursed travel expenses for coming to Belfast. Is there anybody who did not submit travel expenses for that event? Dave, okay.
It's just,
Michael.
I'm 40 minutes away. You know what I mean? I just,
Well, that's totally, that's your guys' call. You could use it for match if you needed to. I mean, I know as Michael knows, because we went back and forth about some mileage reimbursement the other day to an assessment. And he's like, here's my gas receipt for $10. And I was like, well, we don't reimburse for gas. We reimburse for mileage at the federal mileage rate. And it was like $50. So, I mean, mileage is a better way to be reimbursed. So we don't reimburse for gas. We reimburse for tolls and mileage. No food for anything associated with this funding. But we'll get you the volunteer per hour list, Melissa, so that it can be used for the match and the volunteer tracking form.
Just want to throw it out. I'm doing a grant right now, and the standard rate that we're using is like 26 something an hour for volunteers, and I'm going off of
That's probably the federal volunteer rate for just any volunteer, which is great and good to know. Do you know what you based it on?
a link to some,
Exactly.
breaks it up by state and
Right. So we'll get you that link. That's exactly what we're going to get you. But like I said, if you have a professional in the field who's doing something like data analysis or something like more technical that requires more training and skill, they can be billed at a higher rate. Like, this isn't a project that includes architects, but like architects, the federal rate might be like $75 an hour. So we'll get you that list. Other questions? Michael, do you have a question?
No, I'm
Okay.
just, yeah. So actually, yeah, for the pay stub, what do you need exactly from that? Like, what do you mean by pay stub?
Oh, we get at MDF like a stub that says for this 2-week period, this is how much you were paid. And that doesn't have to be the documentation. If you have a employment contract that states an hourly rate, or you have some other documentation that shows how much you're being paid, that's
Okay.
fine. I think
Okay.
it's the idea of saying you incurred the expenses, the organization, the ADA incurred the expenses to pay Michael Hall to do this work. So that's
Okay.
the trail that we're trying to cover. And the documentation may look different from each of your organizations.
Okay.
And just clarifying,
Yeah.
do you need a pay stub for, like, if we were gonna, for every period, or do you just need one to show documentation of that hourly rate?
I think it needs to be for, if the rate hasn't changed, like
Yeah.
some of you might have been being paid differently in November than you are now. So I just want it reflective of the rate currently.
Okay, so if we send like a recent pay stub.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure, because we were only planning on like then attaching one, not however many.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you, for 2 different years, for 22 and 23, we should probably have 2 different pieces of documentation. Sorry, that's just occurred to me.
Okay.
And again, the documentation, could even be like the check, you know, that you get. It could be like a snapshot from your bank account or something, that it was, you know, whatever documentation, again, that shows that the organization paid you, the human, to do the work in 22 and 23.
You're making it very easy.
I'm trying desperately to make it easy. Okay. Match tracking. So as a reminder, each of your organizations, each project, so Saco Biddeford are splitting the match, are required to track 2,500 in match. So 1,250 each for Saco Biddeford. Many of you brought other staff people, like from the city. Michael, you brought someone from Augusta with you. And that person is another one of those highly rate persons. So let's say that's the city EDD that went with you. Cara, you had the city EDD with you as well. So maybe their hourly rate, again, I don't know, is $50 an hour. You know, you can see what we did on this match tracking. You know, it was November, they attended a meeting, volunteer rate, you know, you could put in parentheses, city EDD, and how much they get an hour, the total, and you could fill out the volunteer labor form to document that. We don't have to have their pay stub, and I'll show you that form in a minute. They're volunteering their time. So Melissa, your time now in this role is probably in this category. And then down at the bottom here, this actually should say 1,090, because it's a total. Well, no, you're sorry, don't listen to me. All right, so this is where you are like, this is what we're requesting. This is who you're sending it to. Here's our EIN number. And have you all completed W-9s? I think it was one of the early documents we asked for. Perry, do we know if we have everybody's W-9s? I think we do. Yeah, we'll double check and see if anybody's missing it. And we'll also send all of you the form to use for reimbursement for Belfast, and you can decide if you want to submit it. It's totally up to you. Okay, so that's the invoice. Are there questions on the invoice? And literally, like I said, we've got the money. You'll be reimbursed in a couple weeks at the latest. It's, you know, we want to get you the money.
Is it better to submit volunteer hours like monthly? I was just assuming we would just gather it all and submit it all.
That's fine. Yeah. I mean, some of you maybe, I don't know, in the case of Biddeford Saco, if there's actual, in addition to the 10,000, you know, is there other cash you guys are putting into supporting Megan? Like, does it add up to, you know, 12? Okay, so it's not that. So it's mostly in kind, I would imagine, for all of you, which is the match piece. So what board members, are you talking about this at every board meeting? Are you giving an ecosystem update? Okay, well, that's 10 people in the room times 2 hours times 26 an hour. I mean, there you go. It's pretty easy to document. That was when the board meeting was. That's your match piece. Questions on the invoice and the match tracking? Is it making sense, Michael, especially for you, because you were so good at like, here's my invoice. And I was like, oh no. And it wasn't, you were not the impetus for us having this meeting. We were planning on doing it anyway. But I especially want to make sure you're clear, because you took a good stab at it. And then I was like, okay, we got to start over.
So I just have a quick question. Is it that relates to what you just stated, Ann? Is it understood that pretty much everybody that submitted anything kind of, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but missed the mark? Because I'm just trying to understand.
Right. And I feel like I gotta say, Cara, I don't remember if I looked at yours, because I know you submitted it like right before Michael did. So I need to go back and look at yours, and I'm really sorry.
Oh, no, don't go back and look at mine. I'll just redo it, because
No,
there's been other
we should
things that have
check it.
happened since then.
Okay, right, but I feel really
mean,
badly that we didn't I
Don't feel
didn't
bad.
review yours.
I will never ever complain about anybody scrutinizing my invoices. As long as there's a check coming on the other end, I am okay with going and redoing it.
Okay, well, I really apologize because I should have gotten back to you and it got lost.
Well, I thought this meeting was getting back to me, so you're ahead of the game.
Yeah,
We're
this
here.
was all for you. Yes, Delilah, Perry, can you throw the doc in the chat for Delilah? The one I emailed you earlier. Thank you. Okay, one last document to share. Okay, hold on. Donated labor time form. Thank you, Perry. And we'll also email it out, Delilah. All right.
And I got to
Last-
sign off for another meeting. Good to see you
Yeah.
all. Have a good Friday.
Last document. Bye, Sylvie. Thank you. Okay, we'll wrap this right up in 3 minutes. This is an easy one. Okay. Donated labor. So this said $15 per hour, but we're going to look for that link that Melissa was referencing for volunteer hour. So we're going to update this form. But this is basically volunteers, people attending your meetings, or your board, again, that attends a meeting where you talk about ecosystem work. This is an easy way to capture your match, your $2,500 in donated labor, and that's what this is. And theoretically, the way this is framed up is you're going to give this, like, let's say in Rockland, Dave, that Jesse has spent a lot of time on this. He should actually fill out this form. And again, even if your dates are not secure, I'm just going to say it, just make it up. We know that Jesse has actually spent 45 hours on this effort.
Yeah, just, I mean, I know you're just using an example. Jesse's an attorney, so he has all of his time documented things. So we have actuals.
Of course he does. All right.
I actually have a call coming in. I have to jump. This was so helpful. Thank you so much for putting this on. This was super helpful.
Send us an invoice. Thanks, Dave.
You got it. Bye.
So this is pretty easy. I'm trying to think who else has a volunteer that's worked on it a lot. Anybody? Michael, do you have Victoria or someone else working with you? I mean, it might be your city EDD. Melissa, right? Okay, so Melissa would fill it out, which would be great. Unless, was there a relationship, Melissa, that Gardner Main Street would pay the city? There wasn't that, right? It was just that you would donate your time back to the project. Okay, great. So you will fill this out, and that's gonna make their match. Other questions? On that? Okay. Saco, Biddeford, you guys feeling pretty clear with all of this? Okay.
I think so.
Okay, great. Cara? Clarity? Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Melissa, just have Tamara call us if she needs another deep dive, but it is, I know it's not fun. That's all I'm gonna say. But this is how federal money works, and we didn't know this level of reporting was going to be required until the SBA finally, gave us a contract. So.
And I know you normally do this, but can we get this recording sent to us? Okay.
You betcha. We're going to send you the recording and all the attachments with the right link on the donated labor. Yep, absolutely. And just let me know if you have questions. Okay, that's it. We're done. I'm happy to stay for a couple minutes if people have questions, but you're done. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you. See you in Boston.
Oh yeah, Boston, here we come. Well, Delilah, will you send me when your session is, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, bye guys. Bye, Michael.